Guys, take a look at this beautiful, beautiful brisket. This is what you get when you slow mesquite smoke a brisket. Beautiful and juicy and tender inside. Look at the meat flowing with juices. It's gorgeous. So I'll tell you what, give this recipe a try and you're going to learn the nuances of fine smoking. Howdy folks, welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode, we're going to be making the most magnificent tasting meat that you'll ever put in your mouth. I've been doing brisket videos in the past, but this time I wanted to do a smoked brisket and take it right up to the next level for you. We're going to get into how to make the very best brisket you can. If you're wanting to do a brisket for competition, this is the one that just may win it for you. There's a few tricks and tips of the trade that, well, most amateurs just don't know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tip you off to all of it, to what works, what doesn't work, and why it works. And we're going to produce the finest brisket that can be produced. This is smoked brisket, Texas style. If you're looking to do it for a competition, you might want to watch this video. So come over this way and let's look at these magnificent goodies that we have to work with, and let's get busy making the very best tasting brisket that you're ever going to put in your mouth. Come on over, guys. All right, folks, now let's take a look. This is our brisket. That's what this is all about, this big old honking slab of beef. Yeah, I'm having coffee this morning. That's the way we start early in the day. This is a small brisket, guys. Believe it or not, this is just about 8.5 pounds, and that's a little one. You ought to see the big ones. They're upwards of 16 to 18 pounds. So I tell you what, this, like I said, this smaller size brisket, it's a wonderful one to work with, and it's a good way to learn. But when you finally get down to the real thing, you might look for a big old slab of beef. It's going to feed a lot of people, and it's going to be delicious. Now, before I get into cooking this, I want to talk about slicing it. So many people want to slice this way. And that works because you're going at least partially across the grain of the meat. See, the meat grain runs this direction. If you look closely, you can see that. In fact, let's just do a bit of a close-up on this. Get right down there. You see that meat grain? You see how distinct it is, how it runs up and down this way. So when you're cutting your meat, you want to cut across the grain, which means you start at the point and you cut this way, backwards. Boom, 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 boom. So when you're cutting a brisket, always remember that one little tip. There's this large piece back here, and from the fat end, you want to go to the thick point, not the thin point, the thick point, this one here, and cut from it back. So you just cut 45-degree angle to that corner, and your slices will come out absolutely across the grain perfect, and they'll be so much easier for you to work with. So remember, you're looking for that thick point right down here. So anyway, from there, we're going to get on to what do you do when smoking a brisket to get it just right? Well, it's about temperature, it's about smoke quantity, it's about smoke color, and it's about a lot of different factors. How much fat is on the brisket? A lot of stuff goes into factor on this. Now, the brisket I purchased was a choice brisket, so it's fairly fatty on the intermuscular fat, which produces a very, very good quality smoked brisket. Always look for something that's at least choice grade. The other items I have here, I have some wood, and it's soaking in water. This is mesquite. I'm going to be doing a mesquite smoke because this is Texas barbecue, folks, and in Texas, we have mesquite trees from corner to corner in this state. A lot of people in Texas also smoke with pecan, and some use oak, but those trees are regional. One thing's for sure when it comes to real Texas barbecue, the one that stands out amongst all of the others is the mesquite, because that ugly little scraggly tree, which is very nasty and it's mean, its bite is worse than its bark, produces a very tasty barbecue. Now back behind that, Over here we have a chimney starter. And I want to talk to you about lighting this charcoal. This is so important when you're doing charcoal, guys. If you use a charcoal such as a matchlight charcoal or a charcoal that you use lighter fluid on, then your barbecue is going to have a petroleum flavor. One thing's for sure, there's nobody that has ever made barbecue for competition that won that competition after having started the barbecue with matchlight or with a lighter fluid. And most of the people that do well in these competitions will use some form of raw wood. A lot of them use only straight wood. Others will use a combination of charcoal and wood. That's the way I like to do it. I'll fuel it with my charcoal and then I'll flavor it with my raw wood, and I get this beautiful combination between the two. The raw wood helps to produce much better quality smoke, guys. And the slower you can get it to light, the more it just sits there and heats and smolders, the better, so we soak it in water first. The charcoal itself that I'm using matches the flavor of this. I'm using a mesquite charcoal. So if you want, you can match your charcoal to what you're using, or you can mix them and get a good mixed flavor. All right, so if you're going to mix charcoal, I would recommend using like an oak charcoal, and then putting that with some hickory, and the flavors are good on that. But this is not that. This is Texas barbecue, and we're taking it straight up to the next level. Now, you saw this little tool sitting out here. This little guy is called a mop. Now, a mop is very important because we use the mop to keep the rind of the meat, that outer layer of the meat, from forming up and getting too hard and dry. Because if that happens, then it doesn't get good smoke penetration. If that happens, it's not as good a quality of barbecue. So we want to keep the outer part of that as moist and delicate as possible, and it does produce a better smoked meat. And what I have here are 4 cups of chicken broth, and you can use beef broth for this also. It works great. But I like using this because I like just the lighter flavor, and it doesn't influence the meat so much. I have here some vinegar. I'll be using 1 cup of vinegar and 1 cup of olive oil. The vinegar, don't worry, it won't make a vinegary taste. It's going to help to break any of that crust from forming on the meat, and so the vinegar doesn't give you any problems that way. Then we want something to flavor it, and I'm going to use some cayenne, black pepper, and salt. And that's 2 teaspoons of the cayenne, 1 tablespoon of black pepper, and a tablespoon of salt to this recipe. I'm going to boil it all up, and after boiling it, then we will mop it over our meat. And that'll be after the meat gets a good start. So there's no rush on doing that. Now, first thing that we need to do is prep this piece of beef so that we can get it out on the smoker. And that means removing just some excess fat. You don't want to take it all off, folks. It's very important that it have its fat back. That renders through, and it seriously affects the quality of the beef. Okay, guys, now as I mentioned, we're going to be trimming this up. Now on this side, there's really not much fat, and there's really not much of anything for you to worry about here. For the most part, unless you've got a lot of silver skin on this, which rarely happens, then I would say just leave it alone. Okay, what we need to focus on are any thick globs of fat. This has an intermediate glob here and a ridiculous one over here, and that's what we need to work on. Now, I have a little bit of meat up here that could be mildly effective because this runs up to about here underneath this. It's a thin little layer that comes up in there. And what that is just pretty much the point of that one muscle. So I'm just going to remove that. I'm going to expose a little of that meat, and that's not going to hurt anything. This extra gooey kind of globular fat that's here, I'm removing some of it, not all. And it's important that you leave a thick layer of fat in this meat. Guys, let me explain the importance of this fat. The fat is going to render through the meat. The tallow renders through the meat, and it produces a much better quality meat. See, here's the thing. Fat is acidic, all right? See how I'm cutting that, just a chunk out of it? I'm not taking it all out. I'm not taking it to the meat. We're just removing the excess. It has been proven that all of this fat cannot render through meat on a smoker, okay, when you're smoking meat or when you're cooking meat, the meat will be fully cooked before the fat is fully rendered. So when it comes to tallow, go ahead and remove some of it. See, I have a thick layer still up in there, and that's all going to dissolve out through the meat. It's going to leave a thin layer of fat on the meat that's going to not be too disgusting when people go to eat, all right? And that's what you're looking for. Now back here, if you want to thin some of this, you can do it. And let me show you. Let's flip this around to the other side. Okay, so the thin points in the back, the thick points in the front. Just about an inch back from that thick point, you're going to have a thick band of fat that runs right here. Okay, and that's the part you can thin just a little bit. It's not going to hurt a thing. So I'm going to take some of that fat out of there. I don't want to get it all. I just want to thin it down because I can't render it all in that smoker or after the fact. There we go. Remember, we're leaving plenty on. And another thing about removing some of this, some people would just have a fit that I'm taking any of it off. But let me explain the importance. If your fat is too thick, the only thing that's going to get smoked on the back part is going to be the fat. You're going to have beautifully smoked fat, and the meat will be quite unaffected. I'm looking to get that beautiful red band all the way around. And that's sort of, one of those marks of a good barbecue specialist. If you really know what you're doing, if you're a true pit master, then one thing that you've learned is that this is a combination of how thick the red band is and how juicy the meat is. So you want two factors there. You want lots of juiciness, you want the meat to fall apart and be juicy, but at the same time you want there to be the right amount of fat, not globby. It has to be thin. Right. Now up here, my meat is close. See that? So there's no sense in trimming any of this. Like I said, that's that one strip right there that you need to be concerned with. Right here, you'll notice there's some fat that runs between these layers of meat. One here and one here. This one can be trimmed back just slightly. Oh, just so slightly. Not much. There we go. And it's done. That brisket is now ready to hit the fire, guys. It's got the right amount of fat. Now, something that's important, when it goes on to the heat, when it goes out there, this side right here, and we're going to season it first, this side goes down. This side goes up because fat can't flow upward through meat. It has to flow down. So, we're going to let it flow down. There you have it, guys. Trimming your brisket 101. If this was a big brisket, we would have removed a huge amount of fat, especially, the big ones will have a massive amount of fat running through here. It'll be a glob about the size of your fist, and not too unusual. And like I said, any of these bits on top, leave them there. Those can just sit there and be wonderful. It'll become a wonderful part of the meat. Let's get it on the heat. All right, guys, I'm going to put a little bit of salt on this. And if you've ever wondered why my video goes red, well, frankly, this much red on a camera for some reason just messes with its sensors. There we go, a nice layer of salt. We'll flip it over, do the same side or same thing on this, which is now the top side. I know it sounds weird, that's the truth. We're ready to get this out onto the pit. I just need to get the fire rolling on the pit. So let's take a look at that now. Well, folks, it is a nice warm Sunday morning here in Texas. Down in the bottom of my main section over here, and let me zoom in a little bit, there's a pan right down there. You see that? This is real important, guys. If you're going to be producing some of the best barbecue in the world, you got to do it the right way. This is one of those little tips, one of those little tricks. And that way, as you smoke, it will gently release moisture in the air and help to keep that brisket just a little moister. These are the little tips. These are the tricks that make it work right. Down here in our firebox, we're going to put our fire in there in just a moment. But first I have to get my chimney started up, and that's easy enough. I'm going to start it right on top of the grates here. Now the reason I do not set this flat onto a solid surface is because I want to get air up underneath that as efficiently as possible. The nice thing about this type of lighting charcoal, Of course, like I mentioned to you before, the other way you're just going to get that oily taste, and it really is awful. So the nice thing about firing it up like this, it fires up faster because the heat's concentrated and it rises straight up through the rest of the charcoal, lighting them quickly. So it doesn't take much. The paper only gets it started. Once the bottom charcoal are lit, the rest of it lights up. Once you light that paper, that's really all it takes, guys. From there, that paper will take over. This is going to produce a lot of smoke at first. After that, the charcoal will heat up and we'll have flames. Now guys, when it comes to truly good barbecue, this is all about controlling your flame and your heat. The secondary box on an offset smoker, that guy right down there, that's where the fire goes. That's where you put all of your flame. If you put it under the meat, your meat is going to burn before it has been properly smoked. This is about low and slow, guys. 200 to 225, exactly, dead on, no more or less. On the side here, you have a damper door. And this little guy is real important. Your damper door has a damper right there. And what this does is it allows air to flow in over your charcoal. Now, some smokers work best with this door actually slightly ajar. I've had better results doing it that way. It also depends on the day, the charcoal, and I think the barometer. Guys, it's only been about 2 minutes since our charcoal has been lit, but the bottom charcoal are already hot and starting to glow, and from there, as they heat up, the rest of this will follow suit quickly. Generally, this is 15 to 20 minutes to get it fully lit and hot and ready to go. Long tongs, okay? You're gonna need some of these really long type of tongs because you're gonna be reaching down in a firebox and it's gonna be hot. You might also want some leather gloves also, guys. They're very helpful for this stuff. It is smart to wear leather gloves when pouring out your charcoal because it's easy to get burned. I've done this a lot of times and occasionally I still get burned. My charcoal on top is nice and white, and we're about to drop it right down in here. So I'll tell you what, let's do that. Now all I can say is just pour it out quickly and get it out of the way. If you'll notice, my charcoal, good and hot. I'm going to be adding more right now. There we go. So what I'm doing, I'm getting all of that charcoal up close to my smoke box. Remember, this is my firebox right here, and my smoke box up above over here. I want to get that heat and the smoke up in here. Now, knocking some of that ash out of the way, and don't let that paper ash bother you. There's going to be a lot of ash in this from the wood, and don't forget, you have water in the bottom. Now, the reason I concentrate all of my charcoal in the center and close to the smoker, I want to be able to put my wood around the sides of it, up on the metal here, and allow the metal of the firebox to heat the wood I'm smoking with. So I've got charcoal for a fuel source, and I've got my wood that has been soaking in water, and that is going to be my primary smoke source. Yeah, the charcoal puts out some smoke, but the wood is what's going to really do the trick. I close the lid on that. Now over on the side, let's take a look. Down here we have that damper door. I'm going to open this up about 1 inch to 1.5 inches right on this side with my damper fully open. This is just mine. Other smokers are different. You just kind of got to feel yours out, guys. Over here I'll close this lid to allow heat to build. Now guys, let's talk for just a moment about that chimney. You'll see these little lids on these chimneys. Okay, this is primarily to keep water out of your smoker when it's raining, so close that when you're not using it. When you're smoking, don't choke that down, okay? It's really hard on your fire, and it's not too good for the meat. You want a smooth flow. And that smoke is a little too white. We're gonna slow it down in a bit, but right now we're developing fire, remember? The important thing here is you have to have a good flow-through event. You don't want your smoke to hang out in that smoke chamber too long. And of course it'll seep out around the edges of the smoke chamber. You want that temperature, especially when it comes to mesquite. Mesquite doesn't do well at high temperatures. It'll produce a high temperature easily, but it does not produce good barbecue when you're too high. Now, even though this little gauge here says barbecue grilling, Barbecue doesn't necessarily get produced between 250 and 350. Okay, that you're cooking your meat at that temperature. Smoking meat, which is what we're doing, which creates barbecue, it needs to be between 200 and 225. I mean, just dead on in that bracket, especially for mesquite. And if you want to go as low as 180, you can, but you're really going to drag out your cooking time, and you're going to run the risk of drying your meat. So it's sort of you have to balance many different aspects. Now this will be a little tailgate cooking, so in a bit I'll lower that tailgate and we'll make our mop on it. What we have here, that brisket, if you'll notice, I put the thick side towards the heat source. And if it gets too warm up in this cabin, I'll move it over, and that'll be dictated by the amount of charring on the meat. And later in the cook, I probably will. Right now, I'm just interested in hitting it with lots of smoke, and that's what's gonna happen. Now let's move over to that fire pit and get the smoke balanced the right way. Here we are at our fire pit. Our charcoal has been lighting up real nice up in there. I want to take these wood chunks. I'm not going to place them on the fire. I'm going to place them up on the metal on the sides of this. Now let's get a good close-up on exactly where I'm putting that wood, since it's really hard to see. See how I get that wood right up in there? Down in my fire pit here. Kind of hard to see it, but in the back there we have our wood up and away from the charcoal itself. So you want your wood up on the side, on the metal, and leave it that way. Okay, don't put it on that fire because it's going to flame up. You don't want that. You want a slow smoke release. The temperature will be dictated by how much air we allow through our damper. Choke it down if it gets too hot. Open it up if it's not hot enough. That's all there is to it. Oh, look at that. We're getting to the right temperature, and the smoke is getting to the right color. Yes. Slightly bluish and somewhat thinnish. Lovely. Now folks, if you will notice, typical Texas, what do you know, tailgate cooking. Yes, we actually do that. We cook on our tailgates. Now, these old camp stoves, at first they'll produce a yellow flame, but as they get hot, they produce a really nice, beautiful blue flame, and they do get very, very hot. This one I've actually been using since 1977, ladies and gentlemen. Now, while that gets up and going, the first thing I want to do is to go ahead and get enough black pepper in my pot. And I was going to need about a tablespoon of black pepper. If you have a good pepper grinder, it'll kick it out real quick. Otherwise, you might want to buy just some pre-ground and use it. There we go. Now, I've got about a nice tablespoon down in there. I want to add in about a tablespoon of salt. I'm going to measure that into my hand first. There we go. Angry neighbors, sirens, and neighbors with noisy stereos. Makes you want to live in Dallas, doesn't it? Okay, 1 teaspoon of cayenne. 2 teaspoons of cayenne. Now, we'll put my chicken broth in here. I want 1 cup of vinegar to go with my cup of oil. There we are. 1 cup of vinegar with my oil. We'll put that right in there. Now, I'm just going to bring this up to a boil. And I have my mop right here, folks. Now, I did that custom-made mop with an extra long handle. A mop like this with a real heavy head, you know, that you make yourself, and a long handle keeps you from getting burned when you're doing your barbecue. And finding one like this is easier said than done. Now, what I'm going to do, get this down in here and use it to stir my mop sauce. Now folks, doing a mop sauce is simple, and the purpose behind it is simple. The idea here is we simply want to break the outer layer of the meat that's starting to get dry and firm, and that way we can get that smoke to penetrate better, and it also helps with the moisture in the meat. It just kind of helps it to lock it in there and hold it. And if you'll notice, I didn't inject my meat. And that's because I don't believe in poking holes into it. Now, if you'll notice, I'm out here in my shorts. Got a cap on too, buddy. And typical spring day in Texas. We're about 80 degrees out here right now, and it's about 10:30 a.m. So here we are in the big city, tailgate cooking. Hey, there's another siren. You want to know when the emergency services are at their busiest in Dallas? Hey, pick any holiday. Because for some reason, people think that's an excuse to suddenly become stupid. Now, right here, we see our smoke. It's producing right at 225 degrees, just slightly under 225 actually. So I'm somewhere around 220, 225. I would like to keep that closer to right at 220, and that'll be perfect. But what I've had to do in order to get that cooler temperature was to choke down a great deal on my damper. And every time you do this, your settings on your damper are going to be different. It depends on the wind, the temperature outside, the humidity, everything comes into play. Look at the damper, how far I have it closed. It's only open about 1 inch and the door itself is locked off. And it's holding itself at 220 to 225 with it just like that. So, like I said, every time seems to be a little different, folks. You never know just how far you're going to have to open or close that damper. It depends on each one. This is the reason we check our barbecue once every, on average about once every 30 minutes. There we go. Look at that mop. He's up and boiling, and that's what you want. You want a high rolling boil because you're going to extract the flavor of those that cayenne and that black pepper and get it dispersed through here. And when I put it on my meat, I want it hot. In a moment I'm about to put it on my meat, we're going to start our first mop. And we are about 1 hour and 10 minutes in now. You don't want to start your mopping immediately when you smoke. You want to start it after you get a good smoke buildup in the meat to start with. Now guys, here we are. I've got my mop down here and my brisket. And if you'll notice, that brisket's looking a little different in its color. You're going to see a lot of red on it. The red doesn't mean it's not cooking. The red means the myoglobin is being preserved by the nitrites and nitrates that are being released in that wood smoke. When tannins in wood burn, they release nitrates, and the nitrates act like a preservative on one of those proteins in that meat, and that protein is called myoglobin. Let's take a look at that. See all that red on there? And it'll get more red as time goes on. And that red part on the meat will actually penetrate into it. It is sort of a mark of honor for those who do barbecue, to show a strong presence of red banding inside of the meat after the meat's cooked. And we'll turn this again. Remember, we smoke with that fat side up. And I'm even going to mop that fat, believe it or not. For the same reason, I'm going to not want the fat to form a crust. The acid in this breaks that crust a little bit, allows the smoke to penetrate. The oil helps to seal in juices, and the moisture in that, the chicken broth, helps to add moisture to the meat. Isn't that exciting? Smoked brisket, guys. This is how you do it if you want to win a competition. And my smoke has been low and slow and light. See the light blue in its tint, and it's light in color, and that's just perfect. And it's been going like that for 9 hours now, guys. 9. Get it? 9 hours. There we go. There's the temperature. I haven't touched it. I'm about to open it up, and I'm going to show you what the meat looks like. So let's take a look, okay? Now, kind of dark on the outside. That's the fat side. Let's turn it. Yes. It's still tender and lovely. Guys, I have now pulled this in off of the grill. It has been a long day of smoking for me. If it looks like the outside of this is somewhat burnt, Don't worry about that appearance. That makes no difference to the flavor. It isn't burnt. Now remember when I told you when we cut a brisket, we cut from the point back, okay? We don't cut it like this. We don't cut it like this. We cut it like this, all the way back, okay? Now, that's on the top part of this, what's called the flat, which is this upper portion. If you notice, it pushes up here in the back. This part underneath the flat down here, this is a totally different muscle, and the grain on it runs this way. So if you're cutting this way, you know, you're going to kind of run into a little bit of a problem with there being a bit of a difference there. You can cut those two muscles apart, and that's okay. You don't have to, but you get to if you want to. There we go. Look at that beautiful rind, the red color. This has been going on all day long at 225 to 250 degrees. And so we have a beautiful, beautiful brisket there, guys. This is the way to go. Here's how to make your brisket, how to make your life a little more wonderful. Before you say no to it, oh, yeah. Give this a try. You're gonna love it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there it is. This was an entire day of smoking. Okay? It doesn't come quickly. It doesn't come easily. All right? Texas brisket is a very special thing. You see that red rind? The red rind is a sign of true brisket, true barbecue, true quality. That red rind means it was really smoked. You can't fake it, period. My red rind would have been deeper had the temperature of my smoker been lower when I started my smoking. It was too high. I made a mistake there. That would have knocked me out of a competition. Don't you forget it. That one simple mistake is all it takes, and boom, you're gone. All right, guys, so that's it right there. Beautiful brisket. That's all it takes, guys. It's very simple. Just spend an entire day smoking and kicking back with your friends. That's what makes for good brisket. So I'll tell you what, thank you for watching this episode of Texas Cooking Today. This has been a lot of fun. I had a lot of time outside and with my friends. Thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking Today. Thank you for watching this episode, and if you would, please subscribe if you haven't. Click the bell. I'll let you know when new episodes come out. If you haven't done so, please share this video and like. I love it. I will do my best to answer you if you write in. It's not a problem. You folks have a good day. Goodbye.